As of this moment, damage to buildings and various facilities in 6 Kyiv districts has been reported as a result of a Russian shakedown attack that lasted all night and intensified in the early morning. At 8:14 a.m., the air raid warning was sounded in Kyiv. In the Kyiv region, the threat remains, so monitoring changes closely is essential. Shelling in Kyiv itself has ceased, but the impact of the hours-long attack is evident. The Kyiv City Military Administration and Mayor Vitaly Klitschko reported damage across 6 districts and 2 casualties. We're now seeing footage from our rescuers and the State Emergency Service, who extinguish fires in different districts of Kyiv. So according to the local authorities, the debris of the shaheds fell that night in Pechersk, Holosievsky, Solomyansky, Obolonsky, Podilsky districts. These 5 districts are actually named, but in general, the summary data even refers to 6 districts of the city, where the consequences of the Russian attack, this night's strike, were recorded. In the Pechersk district, in particular, it is known that a fire broke out on the 33rd technical floor of a residential building on an area of 50 square. Partial destruction of building structures occurred at the height of the 33rd, 34th technical floors, where there were no residential premises, but a restaurant. The fire was extinguished, there were no casualties. In the Holosievsky district, the UAV wreckage fell in the middle of residential areas. The shockwave damaged windows in some apartments, and a car service station caught fire, as we can see in the footage. In the Solomyansky district, UAV debris fell into the yard of a private house, causing a fire in an open area. And a fire broke out in a residential building at another address, damaging garages and burning cars. There are also reports of a fire in a private medical facility in the area, where evacuations were carried out. According to the Kyiv City Military Administration, a fire broke out on the territory of a 600 square enterprise and warehouse building in Kyiv's Solomyansky district, injuring 1 person. Thus, the victim is known to be from the Solomensky district. A fire broke out on the upper floors of a business center in Kyiv's Obolon district. In Podil district, a fire was reported in a 2-story private house. The blazes caused a lot of damage, and so far, the Kyiv City Military Administration has reported 2 victims. However, it is not yet known whether they were hospitalized or received medical care on the spot, as the information is constantly being updated. Details are emerging right now, so we are likely to get a better understanding of the situation that took place in Kyiv that night in some time, especially since we are receiving data from different parts of the city. At first, there were reports of 5 districts. Now we're talking about 6, where there is some damage as a result of the arrival of the Shahed. So we are following this information. In the meantime, let's move on to the political section and the most important news related to international politics and Ukraine's contacts with partners abroad. President Zelenskyy spoke with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump by phone. It happened late yesterday evening, even at night, according to the Ukrainian president. The conversation was very positive, and the Ukrainian president had the opportunity to congratulate Donald Trump on his historic and convincing victory. This result was made possible by an impressive election campaign. So we can listen to the direct speech of the Ukrainian president's evening address on this dialogue, this conversation, with the newly elected president of the United States, who will take office in early 2025. Absolutely convincing election result in America. Clear leadership of President Trump. I congratulate you on this victory. In general, for us, in Ukraine, in the whole of Europe, it was important to hear the words of the then 45th President of the United States about peace through strength all the time. And when this becomes the policy principle of the 47th President of the United States, America and the whole world will definitely benefit from it. Ronald Reagan is now so often mentioned. People want confidence, freedom, and a normal life. This is life without Russian aggression and with a strong America, a strong Ukraine, and strong allies. Yesterday, in his first greeting to Donald Trump, the Ukrainian president emphasized that it is important for Ukraine that the United States demonstrate strength in the international arena, continue its leadership in countering authoritarian regimes and the challenges posed by Russian aggression. Does this suggest weakness in the current U.S. administration? The question remains open. Biden's administration has not always met Ukraine's expectations in its responses. However, it plans to continue supporting Ukraine systematically until the end of his term.
Це, питання, скажімо так, відкрите. Абсолютно. Те, що, власне, адміністрація Джозефа Байдена не завжди демонструвала ті реакції, ті відповіді на виклики, на які очікувала Україна.
And now the international American publication Politico writes that the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden plans to use up the entire balance of funds allocated for military assistance to Ukraine before the inauguration of Donald Trump on January 20th, 2025. Two White House officials told Politico about this.
І от уже Політіко, видання міжнародне, американське, англомовне, пише про те, що...
The fiscal year in the United States ended on September 30th, and the new budget and plan have not yet been adopted due to the elections, so this issue has been postponed. However, the U.S. presidential administration still has funds available for the next year, more than $6 billion to provide military assistance to Ukraine.
Двоє посадовців Білого дому. Отже, до кінця фінансового року, до речі, фінансовий рік в Сполучених Штатах закінчується 30 вересня.
Currently, the Biden administration has $4.3 billion in unused funds to provide weapons from U.S. Army warehouses, which are then replaced, as well as more than $2 billion to purchase weapons under contracts with U.S. defense companies.
Понад $6 мільярдів для надання Україні військової допомоги. І зараз адміністрація президента Байдена має у своєму розпорядженні ще невикористаних 4,3 мільярда на надання зброї.
This is a longer process because you need to place an order, and only after the weapons are manufactured do they go to partners in Ukraine.
На закупівлю озброєнь за контрактами з американськими оборонними компаніями. Тобто це триваліший процес, відбувається розміщення замовлень від уряду, і тоді вже ця зброя після виготовлення надходить партнерам Україні, зокрема. Тобто це довше чекати, аніж на зброю зі складів безпосередньо. Однак кошти ці є і...
However, according to Politico, the White House wants to use these funds as soon as possible so that Ukraine has enough weapons to counter Russian offensives at the front, even if Donald Trump refuses to extend the aid next year. Politico's sources point out that it usually takes months to send U.S. weapons to Ukraine, so the defense aid packages announced in the coming weeks are unlikely to arrive in full by the end of January 2025. When Donald Trump becomes president in full force and has all the powers to change the course of events, perhaps even to stop sending weapons to Ukraine. Although we do not know about Trump's intentions at this time, it could theoretically be a problem. Another problem, according to the sources of this publication, is the lack of sufficient weapons in the U.S. Army's warehouses in some positions. This does not mean that we receive all the weapons we need from our American partners, but the replacement of these weapons is paid for from the billions already approved by Congress, and it may take some time. This is the process of intensification of defense assistance to Ukraine by the United States, and we will be watching watching this process, as there have been complaints from the Ukrainian president in recent weeks that not all the promised weapons, not all the defense packages that have been announced are delivered in full, and this is already being felt on the battlefield by our military. Meanwhile, the news from the front is that the Russians continue to put pressure on Donetsk region in several areas, including Dibstate. The Monitoring Initiative reports a certain advance of the occupiers within the city of Toretsk, where there are battles for the areas of multi-story buildings in the city center. Our military are fighting with the occupiers for every house. Recent footage from Azov, near New York and Lipovka in the Turkish direction, shows ongoing battles to clear these areas of Russian occupants. Fighting in the Turkish direction, near Chasovy Yar and south in Pokrovsk, is intense, with Kurakov being the most critical area in Donetsk.
На Покровському напрямку, але найбільш інтенсивним напрямком зараз залишається на Донеччині загалом по всьому фронту Курахівський напрямок,
where the enemy carries out most of the assault attacks aimed at approaching Kurakov from different directions, including not only from the east, from the village of Maximilianivka and the Kurakov Reservoir, but also from the south, from Vuhledar, which was previously captured by the enemy, and from Bohoyavlenka. The occupants are carrying out constant mechanized and infantry attacks. The brigades holding the line are constantly posting footage of repelling these attacks and destroying enemy armored vehicles, including the 79th Brigade, 46th Brigade, and other assault units. These attacks occur by the dozens every day, and sometimes they account for 30 to 40% of the total number of attacks along the entire front. Last night, many enemy drones were shot down in Kyiv. Various buildings in 6 districts of the capital were damaged, and fires were reported in both residential and non-residential buildings. 2 injuries were reported in Solomyansky district, though not serious. Shahed debris caused significant damage in the capital last night. The fight against enemy drones is ongoing in Sumy, Poltava, Chernihiv, Kyiv, and Kharkiv regions. The map of air alerts also shows Zaporizhzhia and Donetsk and Luhansk regions in red, where enemy tactical aircraft are operating and dropping bombs. Enemy activity is also recorded in Kharkiv region, and as for Zaporizhzhia region, it can be assumed that the air raid alarm is sounded there for the same reason. The Russians can attack with ballistic missiles or airstrikes in the regions where the front line runs. As for the north and center of Ukraine, there are Shaheeds flying around, and the fight is ongoing to shoot them down.
Діяти і атакувати в тих регіонах, де пролягає лінія фронту. Але от що стосується півночі і центру України, то там літають шахеди і продовжується боротьба.
Therefore, we urge all our viewers to take the warnings from our Air Force seriously and carefully. President Zelenskyy announced he will be in Budapest today for the European Political Community Summit at the invitation of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban.
Саміт Європейської політичної спільноти і поїде до Будапешта український президент на запрошення прем'єр-міністра Угорщини Віктора Орбана.
Hungary currently holds the presidency of the European Council, and it was in its role as chairman that the Hungarian Prime Minister sent this invitation to the Ukrainian president. The Ukrainian president was also invited to attend this summit by the president of the European Council, Charles Michel. This is the 5th summit in this format, and we can listen to the president's direct speech about this important trip below. Tomorrow I will be in Budapest for the European Political Community Summit at the invitation of the Prime Minister and President of the European Council of Hungary, Viktor Orbán, and the President of the European Council, Charles Michel. This is the fifth summit in this format. The first one was held in the Czech Republic, the second in Moldova, then in Spain, the UK, and now in Hungary. I accept the invitation with gratitude. We will discuss security challenges in Europe, as well as new opportunities for all partners. A number of meetings and agreements with European leaders will be held. This is a very important visit of the Ukrainian president to Budapest. Meanwhile, President Zelenskyy also had a phone conversation with President-elect Donald Trump yesterday, congratulated him on his victory, and discussed future contacts, meetings, and cooperation with the new administration, which will be fully operational in January of next year. While Donald Trump is receiving congratulations from many world leaders, we will talk more about it. Trump is celebrating his victory, and meanwhile, the Democratic candidate, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, has finally gathered her thoughts and gone public to announce her position and concede defeat in the election.
Оголосити про свою позицію і визнати поразку на виборах кандидатка від демократичної партії Камала Гарріс, віце-президентка США, заявила, що вона
Harris bitterly acknowledges the results of a fair and open election, and it is now up to the current administration of Joseph Biden, of which she is a member, to ensure a peaceful and democratic transition of power to the newly elected president. Harris congratulated Trump on his victory, and we can also listen to what she said to her supporters at a speech outside Washington, D.C. Everyone is experiencing a wide range of emotions right now. We need to accept the results of these elections. Today I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I told him that we would help him during the transition period, and we will transfer power peacefully. It is a fundamental principle of American democracy that if we lose an election, we accept the result. This principle, like others, distinguishes democracy from monarchy. And anyone who wants to gain people's trust must honor that. Kamala Harris said, "I accept defeat in the election, but I will not give up the fight that fueled this campaign." Harris is probably hinting that she intends to stay in politics and may run for the U.S. presidency in the next election. Time will tell how the events will unfold.
Ймовірно, натякає Камала Гарріс, що є у неї плани залишатися в великій політиці, можливо, кандидувати далі, не змагатися далі на наступних виборах за посаду президента США. Це час покаже, як воно складеться. Наразі ж чинний президент США Джозеф Байден прокоментував поразку.
Meanwhile, the current U.S. President Joseph Biden commented on the defeat of his vice president, writing on the White House website, "America has seen Kamala Harris, whom I know and deeply admire. She stepped up to the plate and led a historic campaign that demonstrated what can be accomplished with strong moral principles and a clear vision for all Americans." Biden could add that they lost this election together because his role in the Democratic Party's campaign was significant, although he decided to run late. He did not look convincing at the debates, and all the polls showed him losing to Trump. This left Kamala Harris with much less time to launch her campaign, but that's history.
На дебатах виглядав не дуже непереконливо, і усі опитування показували, що він Трампові ці вибори програє. Зрештою, у Камали Харріс такий спосіб.
Donald Trump became the newly elected president of the United States, having won convincingly by all accounts. American media, in particular CNN, reported that Trump was congratulated by Chinese leader Xi Jinping, who had a telephone conversation with the newly elected president. Although the conversation has not been officially confirmed, CNN claims that this information was provided by the Chinese Foreign Ministry. At the same time, the Chinese Foreign Ministry noted that it respects the choice of the American people, and China's policy toward the United States remains unchanged and consistent. Putin decided not to officially congratulate Trump on his victory. Putin distanced from American election. Peskov said Putin wouldn't congratulate him due to U.S. hostility, so no official greetings. At the same time, Russian opposition publications, such as Verstka, write that Putin did unofficially convey congratulations to Trump through his friends, which is how the quote sounds. It is unclear who these friends are, whether someone from the Kremlin called Elon Musk to ask him to convey such congratulations, or whether there are other contacts among Russian agents in the United States who can convey congratulations to Trump from Putin is not fully understood. However, Russian media report that such a contact has taken place and that the congratulations were passed unofficially, covertly, almost secretly, from Putin to Trump. More details may emerge later. Trump also discussed with the president of South Korea the involvement of DPRK troops in hostilities against Ukraine in support of Russia. This was reported by news agencies in South Korea, the Republic of Korea, in particular Yonhap, as well as the news agency, which cited Kim Tae-koo, Deputy National Security Advisor to the President of South Korea. The official told reporters that the Republic of Korea congratulated President Donald Trump on his landslide election victory. During the subsequent discussion, they touched upon security, economic, and global issues, as well as concerns about the situation in Ukraine and the involvement of North Korean troops in hostilities against Ukraine.
Проти України ще обговорили ситуацію в Північній Кореї, розробки ядерної зброї, запуски ракет та інші загрози, які
The parties discussed North Korea's nuclear weapons, missile launches, and other regional threats. They agreed to meet soon to find solutions. This is an important dialogue between Trump and South Korea's political elites involved in the war against Russia.
Політичними елітами Південної Кореї, які безпосередньо мають стосунок до нашої війни проти Росії.
Events in Germany are likely to be linked to Ukrainian events and most likely to the election of Trump. Dramatic processes are taking place in the government coalition, which is actually falling apart, and there is already talk of possible early elections to the Bundestag and the formation of a new government and coalition in the near future. Yesterday, these crisis processes gained momentum after German Chancellor Olaf Scholz decided to dismiss one of the leaders of the Free Democrats, the party's chairman, Christian Lindner.
Канцлер Німеччини Олаф Шольц вирішив звільнити міністра фінансів Крістіана Лінднера, лідера одного із лідерів його.
This party is a member of the so-called traffic light coalition that forms the government in Germany under the leadership of Scholz. The coalition consists of the Social Democrats, red, the Free Democrats, yellow, and the Greens.
Крістіан Лінднер якраз на наших екранах. Світлофорна це коаліція, тому що туди входять соціал-демократи Шольца червоного кольору, так умовно колір партії, жовтий колір це колір партії.
However, the Free Democrats left the coalition after Lindner's dismissal, recalling all four of their ministers, and are actually demanding early elections.
Всіх своїх 4 міністрів із коаліції, ця партія, і фактично вимагають дострокових виборів. Олаф Шольц заявив, що поставить на голосування в Бундестагу питання вотуму довіри до нього та до його уряду, хоча більшості він, очевидно, вже не має в Бундестагу після демаршу вільних демократів. Причиною цього конфлікту між
Scholz plans to raise a vote of confidence in the Bundestag, though the majority may be lost after the Free Democrats' demarche. The conflict with Lindner stemmed from a loss of trust, with Scholz accusing Lindner of political selfishness, hindering effective governance. Their debates focused on financial and budgetary issues.
Є така цікава обставина, що уряд сам собі заборонив брати додаткові позики в борг, тобто нарощувати державний борг
Germany has a limit on the increase in public debt, and next year's spending appears to be overwhelming for the budget. After it became clear that Trump would win the U.S. election, it became apparent that Germany would have to increase defense spending.
Навколо цього дебатували Лінднер і Шольц. Шольц вважає, що можна припинити оце боргове обмеження, так, боргове гальмо, як він його називає.
Scholz considers it appropriate to temporarily cancel this debt break. But the Free Democrats have a different position. Against this backdrop, the coalition has effectively collapsed.
Коротше кажучи, на тлі цього коаліція фактично розвалилася.